1985, you would have been minus 17 years old. Do you know who I am even? Do you know even who I used to be?
Steve Davis, one of snooker's most legendary figures with 6 World Snooker Championship titles under his belt, once made a statement that stirred up plenty of conversation. He doesn't expect to ever see a woman reach the final stages of the World Snooker Championship. Now, before you start thinking that Davis is living in some sort of snooker fantasy land, let's break down what he's really saying. According to Davis, the reason women won't reach that top level is because men have something women simply don't when it comes to snooker: a certain obsessive focus. He believes men's brains are naturally geared for single-minded obsession, which is essential for a game like snooker. The kind of focus needed to practice for hours, day after day, is what gives men an edge, or so he says. Davis went on to explain that snooker is, in his words, an absolutely irrelevant activity in the grand scheme of things. Still, it's a pursuit that men tend to obsess over. From train sets to stamp collections, men often find themselves lost in activities that others might call pointless. And snooker, for Davis, is just another example of this obsession. He thinks men are better suited for such a waste of time, given their ability to block out everything else and dedicate themselves to the game completely. Women, in his view, just don't have that same obsessive drive. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's a pretty bold claim, and you'd be right. Not everyone agrees with Davis. Take Rianne Evans, for example. She's one of the top female snooker players and a dominant force in the women's game. While she might not outright reject Davis's opinion, she does offer a different perspective. Evans has been at the top of women's snooker for years, winning the Ladies World Championship 10 times in a row since 2005. But despite all her success, she doesn't believe the playing field is truly level. In 2014, Evans was a young mother, raising a 7-year-old daughter, and she explained how that affected her ability to focus solely on snooker. Evans said it's hard to give the game your full attention when you have a child to think about. As any parent knows, having kids means your mind is constantly occupied with their well-being, from making sure they're eating properly to worrying about their schoolwork. So, for Evans, snooker is not only about practice and matches, but about juggling family life with a career in a sport that requires an enormous amount of dedication. Back in 2006, Evans won the Ladies World Championship while she was 7.5 months pregnant. She was carrying her daughter, Lauren, and still managed to clinch the title. Can you imagine playing snooker with a bump that big? Evans herself joked that the trophy nearly fit on her bump, which is one way to add a little extra challenge to an already intense competition. She had participated in World Snooker's Q School back in 2014, hoping it would be her big chance to qualify as a professional. At the time, this was a huge opportunity for her, and Evans firmly believed that mental strength was what truly separated the men from the women in snooker. It wasn't like football, rugby, or boxing, where muscle and strength were essential. In snooker, it was all about focus, strategy, and most importantly, having the mental toughness to push through those grueling matches. Evans had always pointed out that while Q power could be an advantage, it wasn't the deciding factor. To make her point, she often used the example of Marco Fu, the top player from Hong Kong, who was ranked number 7 in the world back then. Marco Fu may not have had the strongest Q power, but that didn't stop him from competing at a very high level. Evans believed the same could be true for women in the sport. It wasn't about strength, but rather the mental game. She still felt like snooker was, in many ways, a bit of a boys' club. Breaking into the scene hadn't been easy for women, even at the local level. Evans often recalled how, in league matches, the other teams would send in letters to confirm if it was okay for her to play. Even years later, similar challenges still occurred. It was frustrating, but Evans remained hopeful. She hoped her achievements would help change people's perceptions of women in snooker. The goal was that one day, women wouldn't have to jump through unnecessary hoops just to be allowed into clubs or tournaments. She wanted to get more women involved in the sport, whether it was encouraging young girls to pick up a cue or proving that women could compete at the highest levels. She was determined to show the world that snooker wasn't just for men. Evans also touched on the financial side of things. She pointed out that men's snooker has a lot more financial backing, which means male players can afford to dedicate themselves to the game full-time. They can practice for hours every day without worrying about making a living elsewhere. Unfortunately, that's not the case in women's snooker. Evans explained that there's simply not enough money in the women's game to allow female players to focus purely on snooker. Many women are forced to work other jobs or manage family commitments while trying to compete at the highest level. That's a huge disadvantage when you're up against players who can spend all their time practicing and improving. Despite these challenges, Evans has still made history. She became the first woman to reach the main stages of a ranking event in 2016, when she qualified for the Wuxi Classic by beating Thepchaya Unnu, a male player from Thailand. It was a major achievement for women in snooker and a testament to Evans' talent and determination. But even Evans, who has dominated the women's game for over a decade, admitted that her level of play is still not quite on par with the very best male players, like Neil Robertson. Robertson once made history by becoming the first player to score 100 centuries in a single season. That's an incredible feat and shows just how high the skill level is among top male players. And Davis, while acknowledging Robertson's greatness, believes that this kind of achievement is partly due to the obsessive focus that men can bring to the game. He argues that women just don't have that same drive, especially when they have other things to manage in their lives. For Davis, snooker requires a kind of single-minded determination that men are better suited for. He doesn't mince words when he says that women simply don't have the same ability to shut everything out and focus solely on snooker. In the end, Davis's comments may seem a bit harsh, but they do spark an important conversation about the kind of dedication it takes to reach the highest level in any sport. While Evans and other women are certainly making waves in snooker, the lack of financial support and the extra responsibilities that come with being a woman, especially one with a family, make it difficult to compete on the same level as men. But as we've seen, it's all about mental toughness and determination. Rianne Evans continues to show that snooker isn't just for men. And who knows, maybe the future will have more surprises in store than we think. For more content like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the screen below to keep watching. You won't want to miss what's coming next.